Picture this. It's 2 a.m. You're lying in bed, bathed in the blue glow of your smartphone, scrolling endlessly because your brain simply refuses to shut down. Suddenly, the algorithm serves you a video with moody, cinematic visuals, a lo-fi soundtrack, and text that asks a highly specific set of questions. Do you possess a near-visceral aversion to the bitter taste of alcohol? Do you suffer from chronic insomnia because your mind is constantly racing? Does the energy of a crowded room exhaust you? Do you feel empathy so deeply it physically hurts? The narrative then delivers a comforting punchline. If you check these boxes, you aren't just an anxious insomniac or a picky eater. You possess a rare neurological profile. You are a hypervigilant, empathetic genius. Your chronic insomnia and your rejection of alcohol are simply the biological tax you pay for having an advanced, high-frequency mind that instinctively rejects neurotoxins. For those who have spent their lives feeling out of place, mocked for ordering a sweet mocktail instead of a dry martini, or feeling broken because they can't turn off their thoughts at night, reading this brings immediate, overwhelming relief. It reframes perceived flaws and social alienation as evolutionary upgrades. Yet, when we examine this profile through the rigorous lens of neuroscience, genetics, and evidence-based psychology, we find an ingenious patchwork quilt. The internet has taken isolated biological facts and stitched them together into a romanticized myth. Let's deconstruct this viral phenomenon, explore the true link between hating alcohol and the sleepless brain, and uncover the real science behind who you are. 1. The biology of taste. Why alcohol tastes like poison, and not because you're a genius. Let's start with the first pillar of the viral trope, the deep aversion to bitter flavors, particularly alcohol, black coffee, or IPAs. The internet claims this is a sign of an advanced brain protecting its high-frequency functioning. Science, however, points strictly to the anatomy of your tongue and a fascinating genetic quirk. Science calls these individuals supertasters. In the 1990s, Yale researcher Linda Bartoshuk discovered that about 25% of the population experiences taste with dramatically greater intensity than average. Supertasters often carry specific dominant variants of the TAS2R38 gene, which codes for bitter compound receptors. Physically, they possess a much higher density of fungiform papillae, the visible mushroom-shaped bumps on the tongue that house taste buds. When it comes to alcohol, the sensory experience is even more intense. Ethanol doesn't just trigger bitter taste receptors, it also triggers TRPV1 pain receptors. These are the exact same neurological alarm bells that tell your brain you have just eaten a burning hot chili pepper or touched boiling water. For a supertaster, the bitterness of a hoppy craft beer, the astringency of a dry red wine, or the burn of a straight liquor isn't a sign of immaturity or a conscious intellectual choice to remain sober. It is a genuine, overwhelming chemical assault that their nervous system interprets as a biological threat. Evolutionarily, this ultra-sensitive palate was a massive survival advantage. In nature, toxic alkaloids found in poisonous plants taste intensely bitter. The ancient human with a supertaster tongue spat out the deadly leaf immediately, surviving to pass on their genes. Today, however, society has turned the consumption of acquired bitter tastes into mandatory adult socialization rituals. Supertasters often feel immense social pressure and alienation when their biology forces them to reject these drinks. This is exactly why the viral myth is so seductive. It takes the social shame of not knowing how to drink like an adult and beautifully rebrands it as neurological superiority. You aren't uncultured, your tongue is just highly evolved. 2. The real science of the racing mind, the highly sensitive person, HSP. So, where do the empathy that hurts and the racing mind come in? While this has nothing to do with whether or not you like the taste of gin, it is rooted in a very real psychological framework, the highly sensitive person, HSP. First popularized by clinical psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron in 1996, HSPs, or individuals with sensory processing sensitivity, make up about 15-20% of the global population. Their central nervous systems are quite literally wired to be more finely tuned to internal and external stimuli. Remarkably, evolutionary biologists have identified this exact proportion of highly sensitive individuals in over 100 other species. While the majority of the tribe is bold and action-oriented, a minority needs to be hypervigilant, noticing environmental subtleties to warn the group of approaching predators or hidden opportunities. Dr. Aron summarizes the HSP experience with the acronym DOES, which perfectly captures the genius feeling described in the videos. D, depth of processing. HSPs do not process information superficially. Their brains take a simple stimulus, a passing comment, a news headline, a tonal shift in a text message, and cross-reference it exhaustively with past memories and future implications before making a decision. Shock to 1. Oh, overstimulation. Because their nervous system picks up vastly more detail, bright lights, scratchy clothing textures, overlapping background conversations, their cognitive hard drive fills up incredibly fast. This explains the deep exhaustion and social hangover they experience after chaotic events. Emotional reactivity and empathy. Functional MRI, fMRI studies show that HSPs have significantly greater activation in their mirror neuron systems and the insula, the brain's emotional center. Their empathy isn't just cognitive, it is somatic. They literally feel others' pain, stress, and joy within their own nervous systems. Sensing the subtle, an extraordinary ability to notice micro-expressions and atmospheric shifts that most people entirely miss. 3. The missing link. Why alcohol? Aversion and insomnia coexist. Here is where we can finally see how the internet algorithm brilliantly, yet falsely, stitched this myth together. Why do these two seemingly unrelated traits, hating alcohol and having insomnia, resonate so deeply when paired together online? What is the real connection? The link is behavioral and sociological, not a single genetic mutation. We live in an aggressively loud, 24/7, chronically overstimulating society. To cope with this daily sensory overload, a massive portion of the modern adult population relies on alcohol as a socially acceptable central nervous system depressant. Millions of people use a glass of wine, a couple of beers, or a stiff cocktail as a nightcap to artificially numb their senses, quiet their racing thoughts, and force their brains into unconsciousness at night. It is a culturally normalized form of self-medication to transition from the stress of the day to sleep. Now, look at the lifestyle of someone who happens to be both a highly sensitive person and a supertaster. Because they are an HSP, their brain absorbs an exhausting, overwhelming amount of emotional and sensory data every single day. Because they are a supertaster, alcohol tastes like a toxic, burning poison. Furthermore, highly sensitive nervous systems are notoriously reactive to physiological depressants and the subsequent withdrawal, hangovers, meaning alcohol makes them feel terrible anyway. Therefore, when an HSP supertaster lies down in a dark, quiet room at the end of the day, they do not have the artificial numbing sedation of alcohol in their system. Their hyperarousal is completely unmasked. The external noise of the world stops, but their internal default mode network, DMN, goes into overdrive, frantically trying to categorize, analyze, and process the massive volume of data collected during waking hours. The internet observes this behavioral correlation. People who don't drink alcohol also tend to overthink at night, and falsely concludes, you have insomnia because your advanced brain refuses to numb itself with toxins. It is a beautiful, flattering narrative, but it is scientifically backward. You don't have insomnia because you are a hypervigilant genius who hates beer. You have insomnia because your highly sensitive nervous system struggles to transition into a parasympathetic, rest and digest state. And unlike much of the population, you aren't using a chemical sledgehammer, alcohol, to forcefully shut it down. Your insomnia is a nervous system regulation challenge, not a superpower. 4. The serious medical danger of romanticizing insomnia. The most toxic aspect of this pop psychology trend is how it romanticizes clinical suffering. The narrative paints chronic insomnia not as a serious health problem, but as the noble tax paid by a brilliant mind, a modern digital repackaging of the destructive, tortured artist trope. Neuroscience and sleep medicine strongly disagree. Chronic insomnia is a debilitating physiological state. It doesn't occur because your brain is too smart to sleep. It occurs because your nervous system is trapped in chronic HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal hyperactivation. Your body is bathed in abnormally high nighttime levels of cortisol and adrenaline, stuck in a perpetual loop of fight or flight. The biological costs of chronic sleep deprivation are devastating to the very brain the social media posts exalt. During deep sleep, the brain activates the glymphatic system, a literal neuroplumbing mechanism that washes the brain tissue with cerebrospinal fluid, removing accumulated metabolic waste and toxins. This includes the clearance of beta amyloid proteins, the accumulation of which is directly linked to Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Plus 2. Furthermore, sleep deprivation doesn't enhance your empathy or creativity in the long run. It destroys it. True creativity requires REM sleep to consolidate memories and connect disparate ideas. Chronic lack of sleep structurally disconnects the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rationality, planning, and emotional regulation, from the amygdala, the brain's fear center. This leaves the individual emotionally volatile, paranoid, easily triggered, and chronically exhausted. A plus 2. Ironically, while avoiding alcohol is genuinely fantastic for your sleep architecture, as alcohol destroys REM sleep and causes micro-awakenings, replacing alcohol with chronic stress-induced insomnia is not a victory. Romanticizing this insomnia provides a dangerously seductive, ego-boosting justification for delaying real, necessary treatments, such as cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, somatic regulation techniques, and rigorous sleep hygiene. 5. The Barnum effect and engagement engineering. If the genius connection is scientifically false, why do these videos feel so eerily, intimately accurate when we watch them? Why do you feel like the video is reading your diary? The answer lies in social media architecture and a classic cognitive bias known as the Barnum effect, or Forer effect. This is the psychological phenomenon that makes us accept vague, broadly applicable personality descriptions as highly specific and uniquely tailored to us. It is the exact same psychological mechanism that makes astrology and tarot readings feel so real. Content creators know that overlapping common modern adult struggles creates a highly relatable Venn diagram. Who hasn't lost sleep to anxiety? Who hasn't felt overwhelmed by a loud party? Who hasn't hated a bitter drink? Who doesn't want to believe they are deeply empathetic and creative? By grouping these distinct, common human experiences and wrapping them in grandiose, flattering praise, you belong to the rarest 1%. They create a potent recipe for virality. Vague citations like researchers studying sensory perception have noted, or a 2024 psychological review found, are in the vast majority of cases entirely fabricated, taken violently out of context, or based on grossly distorted preliminary studies. The goal is not scientific outreach, it is engagement engineering. It's pseudoscience packaged as profound self-help, designed to inflate egos, generate shares in group chats, and boost follower counts. Conclusion: separating your identity from your symptoms. It is undeniable that the viral script is emotionally powerful. We live in an era of collective burnout and hustle culture. For highly sensitive persons, who are so often gaslit and labeled too complicated, too intense, party poopers, or too fragile their entire lives, reading something that turns their daily friction into a neurological trophy brings profound cathartic relief. Feeling like an outsider hurts far less when a video tells you that you're simply a more evolved species. True self-knowledge, however, requires the courage to separate your core identity from your clinical symptoms. If you hate the taste of alcohol, accept your genetics without assigning moral or intellectual superiority to them, you are a super taster. Your pain and bitter receptors are firing exactly as evolution designed them to. There's absolutely no need to force yourself to drink IPAs, straight whiskey, or dry wine just to perform adulthood for society. Order the sweet drink, or stick to water with zero shame. If you identify with sensory overload and deep empathy, embrace it. You likely possess the HSP trait. Seek out reliable, evidence-based sources, like Dr. Elaine Aron's books or hsperson.com. Learning to set healthy boundaries, honor your need for quiet, and manage your social battery without guilt will change your life. But if chronic insomnia is draining your vitality, do not wear your exhaustion as a badge of genius. Do not let a TikTok algorithm convince you that sleep deprivation is your biological destiny. See a mental health professional or a sleep specialist. You will not lose your emotional depth, your empathy, or your creativity by getting restorative nights of sleep. On the contrary, by finally resting, you will gain the physical and cognitive energy required to actually put your beautiful, sensitive intelligence to use in the real world. In short, the internet's hypervigilant genius profile is beautifully written and makes you feel profoundly seen, but it must be handled with strict scientific caution. Which of these real, scientifically backed traits resonated most with your experience?